Hello, as Rob said, I'm a senior engineer at Engineer Without Borders USA headquarters, and there are 5 of us there, and we work on mostly quality assurance, quality control for our projects, and the way we do that is through working directly with our chapters, as well as what we're moving to more is education now, because we have a lot of projects. And I'd like to get just a show of hands so I can kind of feel how to run the presentation. Is there anyone here today who's not with EWB-USA? Oh, fantastic. So no one's here that's not with EWB-USA. That means all of our jargon. Oh, one. Okay, I'll try to explain the jargon then. Okay. That's okay. And who are you with?
I'm with EWB New Zealand.
Oh, New Zealand. Okay. That's fantastic. Great to have you. No, that just means I won't throw out a bunch of jargon. I'll try to keep it to a minimum. And you can cue me if I need to explain anything. Fantastic. So what we're going to talk about today is sustainability. And basically we're looking at lessons learned. And so basically this is a failure report of where we've gone wrong. So just like with almost everything that you see in the past that we've done, we're learning as we go along. We're 12 years old, which is pretty young for an organization. We keep trying to improve. We try to use anything that you tell us that, hey, this process doesn't work for us. We want to make it better. You know, we want to do that. And so this is basically a compilation of the things that we found with sustainability that are going to help us moving forward to try to hit that target that's so difficult to hit, which is sustainability. So we'll talk a little bit about what even is sustainability, and then we'll move into what kind of things that you'll need during the assessment phase as well as throughout your project, and how to look at sustainability very early on, and also just to reflect on that. And that's where we're looking to you to give us your lessons learned for this project. So what we always like to start with is looking at our mission and vision, because everything that we do, whether it's training or going out in the field, we want to be able to draw it back to our mission and vision. And so our vision is being able to provide for the basic necessities for our partner communities. How do we get to that? We do that by working on community-driven, sustainable infrastructure projects around the world. And you notice here what we've emphasized, sustainable engineering projects. So right even in our mission, we're looking at completing this sustainability. So, but we'll need to find out how we do that. And for those new folks in the room, we're about 12 years old. We started in Belize, and we've impacted about 2.5 million people. We've probably worked on about 600 projects. We've got about 200 chapters and about 15,000 volunteers. Okay, so first we're just going to try to even define sustainability in a general sense, and then how that works with Engineers Without Borders. Okay, so you'll see definitions that have got 4 parts, 3 parts, 5 parts, 10 parts. This is the one that we're going to look at today. You can have your own definition. We're not trying to define it for you. We're just defining it for the purposes of this presentation. So first of all, is it going to work as intended? Is there the technical know-how to keep this project going into the future? Secondly, does it do no harm to the environment? Is it perhaps even enhancing the environment through your project? Next, is it going to be able to last? Are people going to be able to pay for the project, for its upkeep, and hopefully for expansion, or if it breaks? And then does it work with the culture that's there? Is it not trying to change the culture? Is it going to, is this actually what these folks want? And is it going to be able to handle both internal and external factors that try to stop the vitality of this project? Okay, so we'll go into each of those a little bit deeper. First of all, we're looking at, you know, how is this going to work with respect to other projects that are similar, that are maybe even in that same country or in that same region, and you know, how is it going to work into the future after you've left? How is it going to perform? And there's lots of things that we can look at to try to work with that. We've already got these things in place. You know, so actually for each of these, I'm going to talk about a little bit, you know, what can we do as chapters? So the biggest thing you can do is not slow down, but it's the first thing. It's something to think about from the very beginning, especially on some of our newer chapters or even just an older chapter but newer members. We really want to get things done. We want to implement. We want to go do something. But sometimes the best thing we can do is just slow down and try to get a little bit of the community pace in line with how they are. They very well may tell you only what you want to hear the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times you ask them. So you want to be able to establish that relationship, allow the time to really find out what the community wants and what they want to have for performance measures. Mentorship, and this is something that really helps our chapters to have the right technical experts here in the U.S. that understand. This is why we require a whole mentor team, that you have that construction experience in the field, that you have that international development, that they understand what types of things the community is going to need, and that they have the design expertise in the area that you want to do. And that could be one mentor, but very rarely. Usually it's a whole team of mentors. And even if you do have one really great mentor, it's great to have a backup. So that whole mentorship to help guide you in what is really going to be the best thing for this project. Local technical expertise. So basically these are mentors in the country where you're going to, which a lot of times they can be even better than your mentors here. Your mentor here may know how to do a fantastic water treatment system that costs $30 million, but what about this small chlorine system that you have in your community that hopefully will cost less than $300? That may be the local technical experts there, and we would encourage you to find those for every type of project that you're going to do. Who are the local experts? Get them out there. Have them give you a quote on how they think they could fix your project. Not that you're just going to, you know, give them money. We don't do that as an organization. We design and we construct oversight on all of our projects. But they could be a local contractor for you. It definitely doesn't hurt to have that technical expertise, and it really helps our projects. Assess the hardware stores. You know, there's so much that you can be doing there. As soon as you go, ask them, can you take pictures of everything you can. Get price quotes. Of course it's your assessment. You may not know. Hopefully it's your second assessment that you are going to take a second one there, a technical assessment, to get so you have a little bit more idea of what parts you need. But even on the first assessment, there's probably some things that you know that you'll probably need, maybe some pipes for a water distribution project, or taps, or different things like that. And then also alternatives analysis. We have this in place. It used to not be required. Now we require it of all of our projects because we saw how critical it is. And you really want to take a top-down approach, that you look at the very basic level first of like, not, you know, what type of rebar are we going to use, but it's water supply. You want to make sure to look at rain. You want to look at groundwater. You want to look at surface water. So look at it from a very high level. You can definitely get down. Okay, we've decided we want rainwater. Are we going to do a plastic tank or a metal tank? Or are we going to do a stone tank? I mean, definitely you can go down there and do the next level of alternative analysis, but always hit at least that top level. This alternatives analysis is really going to help you get to that right place. Do it. Really try to take away your own stereotypes and what you want to win when you do that, so that you can go through that. And with this alternatives analysis, make sure that you go back to the community to get their agreement that yes, they're also happy with that, with the chosen technology. And really what we'd love for you to do is not to give them the chosen technology. We'd like to for you to give them 2 or hopefully even 3 chosen technologies. You know what? We are your consultant. And these 3 options will work perfectly. Maybe they're a little bit different costs. Maybe they address the problem in a different way. We want you, community, to tell us which one you'd like to move forward with. That would be the best alternatives analysis to do. And then our TAC review. This is where you go to the Technical Advisory Committee before you implement, and they're going to do their very best to help you. Again, we only do a short level of review there. That's the project engineers along the process. And then also the TAC, when they hit there, they're not going to be checking all of your calculations. That's the job of your mentor up top. That's the most important. We'll be looking for rule of thumb. Maybe if we see something that's really out of whack, we're going to say, something's wrong here, but we're not going to check your calculations. You really need to be doing that up front. And then lastly, monitoring evaluation. This is the thing that we're going to gather from all of our chapters. Organizationally, we can say, we can take that next step and decide, you know what, this just doesn't work for our projects. We're going to take an organizational step forward here and not do this specific type of technology anymore. But we haven't really done that. A little bit, we're starting to move away from certain aspects of certain projects, but not whole different technologies. Okay, so example problems. Biosand filters that work in theory but not at the site. Does anybody have an example of that or know what I'm talking about there? I see a lot of nodding. So yeah, biosand filters have great efficiencies in the lab. They can still do fairly well in the field, but you have to be realistic about the filtration that you get out of your biosand filters and what kind of operations and maintenance you have to make sure is in place, what kind of education you have to do to even get it to those field levels. So you had to make sure to do some really good field investigations there after you're done. The next one, water supply, the yield is not what was expected. Can someone give a lessons learned that they had, some kind of problem that they had where the yield was not what they expected, and why? No one's had that problem.
Well, we had one that yield, not in terms of quantity, but in terms of quality. We had a well-developed well. Anyway, so we've been running out of the well for a while, and and then all of a sudden it turned sandy. We had a lot of sediment.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that way with the geotechnical report. The other wells in the area don't have that. We had a good contractor put it in. It's well reviewed. He put it on other wells that didn't fail. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, great. And for purposes of the recording, I'm going to try to not repeat but paraphrase everyone's question. So I apologize for that up front. But could I also get, before you speak, could you give your name and your chapter?
John Watson, Chicago Professional Chapter.
So John with the Chicago Pro was saying that the problem that they had is they thought they had all the information they needed, but the performance didn't work out in that the water quality was not what they wanted out of their well. It just got sediment and sand in it, even though they had developed it well and they had good reports of the water in the region. So that is something I wouldn't even know what to do with. I don't know where you can go. Thank you. Someone else up here? Nope? Okay, we'll move on. Well, the example I was looking for was that what a lot of times happens is we'll go out in what is not the very driest part of the season, or actually what we're looking for when you get the information from the community is actually about 4 to 6 weeks after the rainy season has started, because the groundwater level usually takes a while to get back up, and it'll actually keep going down after the rain starts. So you don't want to get there right, I mean, if you could time it exactly. You don't want to get there right when the rainy season starts. You actually want to get there a few weeks after that to try to get the very lowest, driest time of the year so that you can be checking the water supply at its worst, because that is the worst. I mean, you're supplying water not because they have too much, but because they have too little. So you want to go check a spring or the groundwater at a point when it's the lowest, so that can be the worst case scenario. And a lot of times when we go out there, we get pretty pictures from the community that say, oh yeah, no, it supplies year round, and oh wow, you built the whole spring box and there's no water coming out of it. Okay, so the next one is environmental sustainability. You basically want to do no harm to the environment, and you want to look at everything, all of the different aspects, the water, the soil, the air, that you're not doing anything wrong with that. And this is really nebulous And this is one that I would admit that, that we probably don't adhere to the most on our projects. And we'll talk about that on the next slide. But the way that we try to address our environmental sustainability aspect is by doing a full cradle-to-grave analysis of the projects. You may have heard of the life cycle assessment. That is the very best thing that you could do for your project, looking at your technology. And I'll point out here the difference between the local, regional, and global scale. So when I talk about global scale, you can even bring things in such as climate change. So if you're looking at, the best example is when you're looking at power for your pump, let's say, for the water supply from your groundwater well. You know, when you look at grid, you need to look at the power that powers that grid. Is it coal? Is it hydro? A lot of our developing countries have hydro, which is low current environmental impact. But when you look at solar, it has no impact locally, but globally, there's definitely some impact from the creation of those solar cells. Some examples, you know, latrine impacts on groundwater. You know, you could be affecting the fish nearby. I mean, one thing that we want to address with our latrine projects is to realize that you're taking something that's very dispersed and you think it's nasty, and it is, that maybe they don't have latrines and they're going to the bush, but at least it's dispersed. When we have a latrine project, we're concentrating that waste, and we can actually do a lot more damage if we don't really think about those latrines and the height and the nearness of that groundwater. The other thing is water diversion. So I said that this is where we probably don't adhere, or where we don't adhere the most to looking at environmental impact. We can really take away a lot of water from riparian ecosystems when we tap a spring. So it's something that we really need to think about, and it wouldn't necessarily stop a project, but it's something to address, to realize what we're doing. Okay, the next one is economic sustainability. So you look at the community ownership, the community buy-in for a project, and are they going to be able to fix that later on? I talked in the previous presentation about ownership as being just one indicator that the community is going to sustain that project in the long term. It's not the totality of it, but it's at least one good indicator that the project will be sustained. And the kind of things that you're looking at for economic sustainability is all three of the cost of operation and maintenance, for repairs in the future, and even expansion. And when we say repairs, we can even include in there the eventual replacement of all of the parts. So if it's a PV system, eventually they're going to, even if it's 10, 20 years down the road, they're going to have to replace those panels. They're going to have to eventually replace that pump. They're going to have to eventually replace the batteries, which is sooner rather than later usually. So how can you analyze this? We look at you know, the cash and in-kind contributions for a project really help with knowing if that sustainability is going to be there. And from a higher level, you look at the full cost pricing. And what we mean by that, if any of you are in the utility industry, you've heard this term a lot. What it means is looking at the full cost of being able to replace that system. So let's say your pipes are going to last 20 years. Your pump is going to last 15 years. Your taps are going to last 2 to 3 years. So you would amortize that out. So you would take all those costs and you'd say, okay, for the full system, we're going to make sure that it remains forever. Every 20 years, we're replacing pipes, et cetera. And then you would amortize that back as, okay, if we were going to be able to pay for all those things, what would be the monthly costs for the community? Or what would be the yearly costs, whatever they go by, whatever they would charge their customers? And you would be able to say, here's the full cost pricing for your system. You can't make them pay that because they're paying for that after you leave. But you can at least give them that number, and you should give them that number. That's your job as the consultant, to tell them, here's how you can sustainably pay for your system to last forever. And actually, one of the best things that, that we've seen some chapters do is that, yes, they have their community pay that 5 to 10% cash contribution up front, but also they're requiring 1-2 months of that operation and maintenance fee from the community to be paid up front so that they can pay for that caretaker to be there while you implement. Okay, so a few problems here. In this case, so all these are real things that happen on our projects. We had a water system with PV panels to be able to power that pump, and those solar panels were stolen like a few months after the chapter got there, or after the chapter left. And the community did not have any cash to be able to pay for that. So there are definitely some things maybe you can think about in your own heads. What could they have done to do that better? Well, they definitely should have secured those things a lot better so they don't just get stolen. This isn't a picture of those, but it is kind of funny, isn't it? You could assume someone with a grass house is not going to be able to pay for solar panels, or a grass roof, I should say. But yeah, there are things they can do, and also even here in the U.S., we don't expect for you to be able to pay off loans for your utility systems within a month. It takes a very long time to pay those off. Uh-oh, I need to plug in. Sorry. A little bit of inconvenience so the whole thing doesn't die on us.
If you'd like, I can give a follow-up on that.
Okay, please.
Yeah, so, so for clarification, I'm now with the Chicago Professional Chapter, then it was the EWB University of Illinois Nigeria project, and I basically went to one of the guys that's done a lot of this kind of work, Rob Beadle, and ran the whole thing by him, and he said, yeah, it's a tough problem, I'm not really sure, but the only thing you can do is keep pumping. So you keep pumping, keep pumping, keep pumping, and then all the sand actually, like all of it that was loose came out.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so we had good water supply and clean.
Wow, thank you so much for that follow-up, because I had no idea what you had to do. Because it was a well-developed well.
Yes.
But now it's super well-developed. Fantastic. And you were using a very strong pump to get it out of there, right?
Yeah, and a lot of, I mean, more than the system could take, more than people could use. We were
Yeah.
pumping it out, like off our clean-off valves at the end.
Wow.
Yeah, it worked.
Wow, thank you for that. That's a great follow-up. Okay, fantastic. Another example problem. And we actually had this right when we started, that people were thinking, okay, you know, we are going to charge our communities for our biosand filter or for our latrines. We're just going to do this pilot, you know, and we'll do this pilot and it'll be free, but after that we'll start charging for it. Well, obviously, as you may have assumed, after a few community members get something for free, none of the other community members are going to want to pay for it. So you set up you really have to be thinking about this economic sustainability right up front. And you're going to have to charge people from the very beginning, even if it is only a pilot. Okay, cultural sustainability. This is kind of nebulous, but you want to preserve their social structures, all of their cultural values, all of their wisdom that they have there. You want to promote that social equity, and you want to do it in a participatory manner. In other words, you want to involve them throughout the process from the very beginning, that they are participating in your very first assessment, in assessing themselves. Someone gave us this great example that they were using the very community members to do their surveys out in the community. They would walk with them, and they would be teaching them how to do it, and you know, get them throughout the process and check back with them to make sure that they got good data. And didn't wait till they're already done with 1,000 people, that they'd check in with them every once in a while and make sure they were doing good work, but using that participation there. Let's see, that your project is a high priority of the community, not a high priority of yourselves or the NGO. So make sure it's the community's high priority. And you want to make sure that the services that come from your project are shared with everyone, and there's no kind of prejudice going on there. And there could be prejudice that you don't even know about. So be very patient with trying to understand if there's any kind of prejudice or stereotypes in the community. Make sure that you understand who is the full community. Is it not including some Muslims? Is it not including a different tribe? I mean, really try to think about, okay, well, are they truly a different community, or are they part of this community who just hasn't been invited to our meetings? Try to understand that. Okay, so high priority to the community. So I didn't say highest here. Can someone tell me where would a not highest priority system still work as an EWB-USA project?
Sanitation.
And why would that be?
They might not understand the importance of it themselves.
Great, great. So the answer was sanitation. It might be that they don't understand the importance of it themselves, and that would still be a high priority for the chapter. Any other ideas?
Well, there's lots of things that people are trying to farm to make a livelihood. It could be that during the farming season, even if they really care about their sanitation and water system, that feeding their family is going to come first.
Mm-hmm. Right, right. So the answer was that maybe they're really busy with their farm, and even though this is an important item, they can't put priority on that right now. My answer would actually be a little bit different from both of these in saying, if it was my personal project and I was going to the community, I would say, I don't care if it's number 3 on your priority list or number 2 or number 1. What I care about is you come to the table with your in-kind and cash contributions. Let's say you want a well, but maybe we don't have the technical expertise. Maybe we just don't have the cash as a chapter, because wells are really expensive. Maybe we don't have $20,000, but we do have a couple $1,000s that we could provide for this project. So why don't we start out with a rainwater system? And if the community comes to you and says, okay, we'll take a small system first, even though that's not what we really want. What we really want is a well. But we'll show you that we are committed to this project. Maybe it's just a rainwater catchment for a school. So if they come through and they prove to you, and you can even tell them, this is like homework. You guys prove to us that you're committed to this project, and then we'll all move forward and get the capacity to do that next project. So that would be the ticker for me, is that I don't care which number of priority is on your list. If I currently have the expertise within my team to address this project, and the cash resources, and more importantly, you're committed to the project enough to pay for it, then I think it's okay for moving forward. Okay, so more on that. So how do you address this? So I mean, this slide, as well as all the slides, could be much longer than it is. But just be sure to listen to your community, which is a no-brainer. But that takes a lot of time to get past the point where they're just telling you what they think you want to hear, to getting to what they actually want. And you can be talking to and listening to your NGO. That's the reason that you have this partner non-governmental organization. They're there to tell you where they think the community might be telling you what you want to hear. And here's what we think NGO they really are not telling you. Here's what you're missing when you're talking to them. Even if you have people on your team that speak the local language, which, by the way, is really great. If you have someone, especially if it's just Spanish or something and not Quechua, but even if it's Quechua, if you can find someone who's maybe a native from that area that moved to an area near you that you can use to take with you down on a project, or at least, if you can't do that, get a local translator to be able to help you out with understanding their language from their perspective, as opposed to an outsider. Let's see, what are the current community structures? Where's the power in the community? Is it distributed? Do you need to go to a bunch of different groups, the women's group, the men's group, the church groups, the tribal groups? Is it concentrated? Do you just need to go to the mayor? Do you need to figure out what are the power structures there? And what are those resources that you can be getting to get the most information? These implementation and project agreements are really there to prove that the community is committed. Even before you go out there, they still have that 501, which is the community application that says when they'll be ready to that they're ready to take on their 5% cash contribution and any in-kind contributions. They say in the 501, which is their program application, then they say when you go out there the first time on your first assessment trip, they sign your project agreement, and then they're going to sign before you ever even submit your full design to the technical advisory committee. They should have already signed that implementation agreement that says, oh yeah, not only are we committed to a 5% cash, but we're committed to $733, which is the exact amount of what that 5% entails. So those agreements are really important for making sure, because if there are people in the back maybe saying that this isn't going to work, you know, that they won't come through, or at least there's an indicator that says, okay, they really are committed to this when they come through with their cash and in-kind contributions. And lastly is education, and this is education both ways, of course, that you're there in the community learning from them and you're teaching them, you know, as was pointed out earlier, maybe they don't understand how important latrines are. Well, you better teach them quick before you actually implement a latrine project. Otherwise, you may end up with some really, really pretty, like tiny warehouses that you'll see a bunch of grain in when you come back a few years later, as opposed to people actually using those latrines. Okay, so an example problems, and this is one maybe you all have heard of, but a chapter came in. They saw that there was just nasty smoke in this tiny closed one-room kitchen that was outside that this poor old mother was in all day long cooking, and she's probably going to die of asthma and lung disease by the time she's 40. And so the chapter went in there and built a cook stove project, or made a cook stove project that was not used. Do you have any idea why?
Because they thought it was a good idea.
Exactly. Well, yeah, that's a good point. Anyone else? Bugs is one, that a lot of times the mosquitoes are kept out by the smoke. Yes?
Lack of education about benefits.
Absolutely, absolutely. They have no idea that the smoke is doing them long-term harm. Yep, these are all great answers.
Where were they sourcing their fuel for the cook stoves? Is this like a propane or used from deforestation or firewood?
Right, right. That was a great question. What is the source for this cook stove? Oh my gosh, if it was propane and they don't even have a way to get to propane, that would be a really good reason for not using that cook stove. But yes, that was a good point. So your source of fuel? Right. Maybe they just never really got taught how to use these cook stoves. So cook stoves are a touchy subject, and in the international development community, it's really gotten a black eye because we've done so many of them, and so many of them have failed. So these are all great answers. You guys are really on top of it. Okay, so the last one is resilience, and that means that resilient in that it can handle basically any type of challenges that are going to try to stop its viability from lasting in the future. And just I'm sure there's many different ideas, but for what kind of internal issues could keep a project from lasting for the long term that it needs to be resilient against?
Transfer of knowledge among, like, we have a water committee, and if the members rotate every 2 years and there's no transfer of knowledge.
Absolutely, that's an internal problem that that the operation and maintenance education needs to go on. That's an internal problem of resiliency that we need to deal with. Any other internal or external? Yes?
Not collecting fees.
Right, so not collecting fees is another internal problem, that if there's no O&M fee collection, then there's going to be a problem of that lasting into the future. Yes?
Landslides taking out water lines?
Absolutely, that's an external. So I was waiting for an external one, good. So an external challenge to the viability of your water system could be a landslide, and we've had this in many of our projects, like, gosh, in the last 2 to 3 years, I'm sure you've heard on the news, so many of these landslides, and they're affecting our water projects, that they're taking out our water lines. And so that's a great point, and we can also look to the potential of extreme events increasing with climate change. So external pressures like that we can be looking at, okay, if this is happening, maybe not in our area, but around our area, we can think about extreme events increasing, and how are we going to deal with, maybe if we're in a dry area, what if it gets a little bit drier? If we're in a wet area, or usually you're both, in the wet season, the rainy season, what if the rains do increase 150% more than the highest? How would we deal with that? That's a great one. Yes?
Many of the successful projects are being lost due to land ownership issues afterwards.
Ooh, that's a very good point. So land ownership, and I'm not sure, I guess I'd call that an internal issue within the community, that was not figured out. And this is something that is very difficult for chapters to work with, especially if it's a very large water distribution project, is the land ownership, because to actually get all of the deeds and the map, as well as the signed declaration that says that this person owns it, and then that person signs it over to you for every single inch of the way. I don't think I've seen a single one of our projects that's done that, but it would be great.
Usually it's the successful ones that has that problem. If it doesn't succeed, nobody cares for the land.
Right.
If it does succeed,
Right.
that's where the land
Right.
owners comes in and wants to have it.
Right, very good point, very good point. So it's only if it's a successful project does that land ownership become an issue. And I do want to point out that no, you can't get, or you usually can't get the land ownership for every part of your pipeline, although that's really what you should be doing. Most importantly, at least get the ownership for that spring. The land ownership, and if there's a separate water ownership, make sure you get both of them for at least your spring source, or the piece of land where you dug your well. You gotta get that. That is really critical. Thank you for that one. That's a great one.
One is maybe internal conflict. You know, there is a project of University of Washington in Bolivia. They decided to actually abort the project. I'm not sure it's temporarily aborted or just completely canceled because of political issues in the area that they are doing some projects. Because I'm in the Seattle area. So. And that's sometimes you don't have any control.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
War or something like that. Yeah, absolutely. That is a great point. So University of Washington in Bolivia had a problem of political strife, and that was actually on my slide. You got it exactly. And yeah, that's something that you absolutely have no control over, and that can really ruin a project that you don't have a lot of control on. I think we're down to 15 minutes, so let's move forward, and we can pull some questions till the end here. Okay. Just a few. We're going to have some questions for the group, and this is just a note leading up to that. Hard and fast rules for analyzing the sustainability of a program. No, you know, we had these 5 definitions. You could have 6, you could have 4. We're not going to hammer you for having the right number of characteristics. And you know, you can use what you think is important as long as we can agree on what are the most important aspects. I think we'll be fine. Equal weight to the sustainability characteristics. Are there chapters who give different weights to those different characteristics of sustainability in the room? Or does everybody give them the same weight? Examples?
We don't give them the same weight.
Yeah.
I mean, some are, I would say, are absolute requirements that the project won't even go through.
Right.
But others, you know, are definitely due to be included.
Mm-hmm.
Probably aren't the top priority.
Right, absolutely. And I think on our projects, historically, we've probably put a lower importance on environmental aspects and a higher importance to economic and cultural aspects of sustainability. So it's probably organization-wide. Frankly, I don't know what to do about that, especially taking away water from a riparian system. You know, I mean, it's gone. But I don't know. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, there's no hard parts to
Yeah.
and it's an issue among many chapters in our region.
Yeah.
Region, so,
Yeah. Yeah.
There's really no. I mean, yeah, and I think many of the projects that we have, sociocultural sustainability is the most important.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we actually focused on.
Yeah, yeah. I agree that you know that it's definitely just to paraphrase for the video. We've got for all of our chapters, but particularly in the Northwest area, there were you know they found that really cultural sustainability was probably pushing it. Although they did look at all of the aspects of sustainability. Yes.
I have a follow-up question.
Please.
How important is the community's thoughts on the weighting of these characteristics versus the chapters?
That is such a good point. I was actually going to bring that up, and I would put forth that for the majority of our projects, that weighting. And let me paraphrase because I'm not sure. I want to make sure I understood your question right. The weighting, the weighting of these 5, in our case, characteristics of sustainability, when you do your all terms analysis, for instance, how much do you weight each of those 5 characteristics? Is that done by the chapter? Is that done by the community? Or is that done by both of you? Was that your point? That is a fantastic question. Does anybody have any answer for that? Yes, ma'am.
The Color Experience Professional Chapter, we just finished a 5-year-long project in Suncaya, Bolivia, and we were trying to get the community to have to have annual contributions for the water board, but they didn't do it. So we decided after the 5 years that we will not return to the community because of this, that we will not contribute or do some further projects. So it was both our decision which was based on their decision.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. And that has happened on some of our projects, and we absolutely support the chapter in that. And so what happened, and what chapter was that?
Colorado Springs Professionals.
For the Colorado Springs Professionals, what they had is a community that maybe had said that they were going to come through with their 5% cash contribution, but on that first project, they did not come through. And the chapter's response was, you know, we can't make you come up with that cash now, but what we can do is say, we consider this an unsustainable, that you currently don't have the capacity to handle this first project. We're definitely not going to go and implement a second project, which you also won't be able to have the capacity to handle. So I would say our lessons learned from that would be to make sure that that cash is in place, whether it's with the treasurer, in the bank, with your NGO, with someone even before you purchase your airline tickets. But that would be a lessons learned. But at least you took that next step and you said, sorry, community, we're not doing project number 2. So I appreciate the community, or I mean the chapter, taking those steps, because you took those steps for the community. So thank you. That's great.
The problem really is that on the sociocultural, it's so tangible, but everything else is predicted. I mean, like economic, and you don't really have tangible data. But when you talk about social sustainability, it's the acceptance of the community.
Yeah.
It's so tangible. I mean, you're directly communicating with them and getting feedback from them.
Right.
When it comes to economic sustainability, that's predictive. And
Yeah.
Gathering data, I mean, what we know is that economics, even with forecasts about
Mhm.
flattening and all that. So I think that's probably the challenge.
Mhm.
And I think we talked about in the past about having sort of a quality control,
Mhm.
you know, documentations
Mhm.
that would instruct us to, you know, measure economic sustainability
Mhm.
and environmental, because we don't have those.
Absolutely.
We don't really have, I mean, everything that we do is based on what we do know has been documented fully about what has been done in the past, about instructions how to conduct surveys and all that thing.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I think when it comes to actually us writing, say, pre-assessment reports and all those reports we made,
Mhm.
it has to be assessed on environmental and all that more, you know, instructive and detailed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We had a great recommendation that from headquarters, we work to do more instruction for the sustainability from the non-cultural aspects. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Because the culture aspects are fairly straightforward. I mean, you're working with the community. That's probably has the biggest weight, and you're working directly with them, hopefully. And so you know if they don't want it, they're telling you, no, we don't want this. We want Y instead of X. But they were requesting for more help with weighting and measuring the sustainability of those other 4 aspects of sustainability. So yeah, we can definitely start working on that, and feel free to follow up with us if we don't get that to you. Okay, we've got a few more slides here. I'm not sure how much we'll get through. We've got a small case study at the very end that's not really critical, but I do have just a few slides here that I want to make sure to get through our lessons learned. And more importantly, I want to get through these just to kind of prompt you all to give your own lessons learned, which is the more important, because I want to make this viable for you to help your colleagues in the audience. Okay, so I say that on each of these slides, so just to remind you to be thinking of your own experience that you can share from your own project. So one idea here, one lessons learned here, we had a water pipeline in Rwanda. The neighboring community literally dug up their pipe, and the receiving community, the first community, was fearing that that neighbor community is going to try to inject poison in their system. So the first question is kind of a fun one, which is, what do you all think that neighbor was really doing when they dug up that pipeline? They were stealing it. They were going to go tap that bad boy. So yeah, that's probably what they're really doing. But the second thing here, what is the lesson learned that you all would take from that? And there's more than one, and there could be some that we didn't even think of. But what would be a lessons learned from this particular aspect?
Well, I would assume that one community, I mean, there must be a different tribal group, right? I mean, if this
Yeah.
looks like it's in Africa.
Absolutely.
So I think that should be factored, because, I do know from what we know in village history.
Yeah.
There's different communities.
Oh yeah, Rwanda especially.
There's typically, yes, Rwanda. So
Yeah, yeah.
That's probably something that needs to be looked at prior to looking deeper into the project.
Absolutely, absolutely. You hit the key point there, was prior. They should have been looking at this, at the neighboring communities and whatever kind of political relationships were going on there before they went and implemented. Maybe they should have, at a minimum, they should at least been talking to the next community, because maybe that community would be a great community to work with next. But now that there's really some major issues going on there, that it's going to be a lot more difficult to say, don't worry, we're going to do your community next. Well, they're already digging up the pipeline. So there's probably going to be some issues with doing that. So that's definitely something you want to look at first. Yep. Okay, we've got just a few more here. Let's see. So yeah, be thinking of your own experience. So biosand filter project, sand sources were not found during the assessment. And when they did go out there for implementation, they realized the only sources for sand were available only by boat from a very far distance. So what would be the lessons learned here? I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Materials are available locally?
Yes. And when is the key? On your assessment. That's what your assessment is for. But what if you forgot to do it on your assessment? Go on another assessment. But yes, you could also call your NGO. But your NGO may not really understand what you need. They're like, well, duh, there's a river right there. Just dig it out of the river. But you can't really use river sand, because it's not very angular. But anyways, yes, that's a good point. You could do another assessment, get that information, or just make sure on your assessment to get that information if you have any idea that you're going to do a biosand filter project. Great one. Yes?
I feel like it's kind of like packing through something like this. Like, you got to go through your whole project step by step and see, do we have everything we need? This is actually going to function.
Right.
It's sustainable,
Right.
It's just something like that is like, that's a huge oversight.
Absolutely.
Like, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
They just really got to go through it step by step and see will this work.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't you hate those instructions? They say, read the entire instructions before you start. I never do that. But you feel like you should be reading through the whole story. It's just like you said, you need to go through the whole project and think about what are you going to need for each phase before you even go on your assessment. That's a great one.
There's an interesting story about biosand filter. About last year, there was a student chapter who did a biosand project.
Uh-huh.
So the water produced by the biosand filter was clean, but the taste was terrible. So
Oh, that is a great one.
That's great. It's clean, but
Yep.
it's...
Yep. Yep. And that's something we do in the U.S. And secondary, what are they called? Secondary contaminants or something like that. And they do absolutely, sulfur, they do absolutely no harm. You could drink sulfur all day long. The problem is it smells nasty. And yeah, like rotten eggs. So no, who wants to drink that? I don't care if it's healthy or not. So yeah, and that's one where it's technically it's a successful project, but it failed because people won't drink it. For you guys, I'd like to hear from you all. Can I have some ideas of case studies with respect to sustainability? What has helped your chapter? Maybe what did you miss in sustainability that you wish you would have checked beforehand? Things that you've learned that you're going to apply on your next project? Yes?
The first EWB New Zealand project was in Tonga, and the school approached us asking us to put in solar panels on the roof, which we obviously enthusiastic young organisation did. Fantastic. We helped this community with this single project, but we looked back at it and realised that we would have actually saved this community more. We would have saved more energy had we fixed the leaking taps rather than necessarily solve it. So, that's actually a question. A lot of what you're talking about has been, say, alternative analysis, but it's still, let's fix this problem.
Absolutely.
With technology.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized, well, we're engineers as opposed to technicians.
Mm-hmm.
That point's often missed. And maybe we need to actually step back and not say, oh, I'm a well designer, so I'm going to treat every problem as a nail because I've got a hammer, and actually say, what, really look back, and could we think of social engineering or other things rather than just, let's fix this with the hammer?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I'll paraphrase that. So EWB New Zealand was given a project where they were asked to come out and install some PV panels at a school and in Tonga. And they did that. And they found out that was great and wonderful. But then they found out later that they could have done even more, had more impact if they had just fixed the leaky taps there. And so the question was, maybe we should go back a step and not try to fix every problem because we have these skill sets with the skills that we know we can use. In other words, if we're a groundwater driller, we know that we're going to drill you a well. But rather to take a step back and really ask the vital questions of what are the underlying issues that are maybe causing this problem, or what are the underlying issues that you'd like to address, and that's a fantastic lessons learned. I really appreciate that because that gets to the heart of our PMEL program, and going back and asking the community, you know, what is the real problem? Well, I told you I need a well. No, what is the real problem? I need a well. How difficult is that for you to understand? But really. You know, maybe your problem actually is the health of your children or of your senior citizens. I mean, really trying to get back to, you know, what are the underlying issues that you're trying to address here, and which can seem mundane to our chapter. So I appreciate that because that's like another nod to the PMEL program. I think we've maybe got time for one more comment or question. Another lessons learned about sustainability? Yes, ma'am.
I guess we don't really have enough time to really hash into a discussion about this, but I'm curious about your ideas in preserving the culture of the community, the culture and the social structures and stuff, because we seem to have this issue where we came into a community, and since being there, you know, just being present and with our technology and stuff, there's this kind of shift in the community's culture and what they do in their free time and stuff. And by doing some of the things we did, we allowed them to have enough money to purchase solar panels. And so, you know, they watch TV now
Mhm.
instead of like playing soccer together and stuff.
Mhm.
And it just seems like it's kind of dispersed the culture in the community.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Wow. I don't even know what to say. So, but let me at least repeat that because that's for our viewers. That would be such a great lessons learned. So, the question had to do with changing the culture in a community, and so from the great things that chapter did, the community had more time, and so they were able to maybe do some more money-making things, and they were able to purchase solar panels. And then with those solar panels, then they were watching TV, and then they were stuck in front of a screen instead of playing football. And oh, isn't that the problem here in the U.S.? And they've just inherited our wonderful problems. So yes, no, that's a great point. I have no idea how to answer that.
You know what? I think that in previous conference that came up, and that was a very good question because somebody suggested, is there an anthropologist without borders who can
Yeah.
address those issues that we can work with?
Yeah, yeah.
We are doing so much. I mean, there's got to be some like architect without borders, or
Yeah.
all these people we can work with. And
Right,
not
right,
just on
right.
community-wise and-
Maybe a thief without borders. They can go steal all those screens.
Yes, absolutely.
So, well, thank you all so much for coming.
Good job.